I never thought a quiet Wednesday afternoon would turn into a $1 million headache. I was hauling my load down I-80, big rig, purring along, safe and steady, when out of nowhere, a high-end car just dropped in front of me like I didn't exist. She cut me off, slammed the brakes, and I felt the rumble stop just feet behind her bumper. The car door swings open, the driver storms out, starts screaming. I hit her. The luxury car, the attitude, the "you're supposed to stop me" vibe. It smelled bad, real bad, but I'm driving 80,000 pounds of steel. I didn't crash into her. My dashcam shows everything. So when 2 days later I'm staring at a lawsuit for millions from a woman claiming I totaled her car and injured her body, I know one thing: this isn't over, not by a long shot. I've got that video. And the moment the judge presses play in the courtroom, well, that's when the real road rage justice begins. I've been hauling freight long enough that the white lines on the interstate feel like old friends. Some folks go their whole lives without crossing state borders. I crossed 3 before breakfast. My name's Ray Halverson, though most everybody on the CB calls me Halvey, sometimes Iron Shoes, because I keep the same boots until they practically dissolve. For nearly 30 years, this rig has been more home to me than the little ranch house I got outside Sioux City. Out here, with the diesel rumble under my feet, I know who I am. I know the rules. I know what's right. Pioneer Freight isn't one of those mega carriers you see plastered across every rest stop. We're a 20-truck outfit based out of Council Bluffs, running regional routes through Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, and sometimes down into Kansas when the freight calls for it. Mark Sullivan built the company from 2 trucks back in the 90s, and he still knows every driver by name. That matters. In this industry, you can feel like a number real quick. At Pioneer, you're a person. I run a Freightliner Cascadia 2019 model Detroit DD15 engine under the hood. She's got just over 400,000 miles on her, broken in nice, running smooth. The kind of truck that doesn't complain when you ask her to work. I keep her clean, not show truck clean, but respectable. Chrome polished enough that you can see yourself in it. Tires rotated on schedule, oil changes like clockwork. And yes, I run a dashcam. Always have, ever since they became affordable and reliable. Front-facing GoPro mounted just above the windshield, recording on a loop, saving the last 12 hours of footage. I've never needed it for anything serious. Caught a few close calls, a deer that nearly ended badly, a blown tire on another rig that could have been catastrophic. Mostly it just sits there, blinking its little red light, a silent witness to 10-hour shifts and endless highway miles. I thought it was just good sense. Turns out it might have saved my entire life. The day it happened, I'd been on the road since 5 in the morning. Not unusual. I'm an early riser by nature, and I like beating the traffic out of Council Bluffs before the commuters clog up the merge lanes. My load that day was nothing special. Pallets of industrial equipment headed to a warehouse outside Des Moines. Weight was good, balance was good, weather was clear. Just another Wednesday. I was about 40 miles east of Council Bluffs, cruising at 62 miles per hour in the right lane. Traffic was light, a few passenger cars scattered across the 3 lanes, nobody in a particular hurry. The kind of driving where your mind can wander a little, thinking about what you need to pick up at the grocery store, whether your daughter remembered to pay her phone bill, if the dog needs his shots updated. That's when I saw her in my mirror. A silver Mercedes SUV, one of those luxury models that cost more than most people's houses. She was weaving slightly, not drunk weaving, but that impatient kind of movement where someone's been stuck behind slower traffic and finally sees an opening. She shot across 2 lanes without signaling, sliding into the gap between me and a sedan about 100 yards ahead. I eased off the throttle, just a reflex. Not because I was worried yet, but because I've learned over 3 decades that when someone drives like that, they're probably not done making bad decisions. She wasn't. She closed the distance to the sedan in front of her fast, then darted left, into the passing lane. For a second, I thought she was just going to blow past and disappear into the distance like most speeders do. But then she swerved back into my lane, directly in front of me, with maybe 30 feet of space. Not enough space. Not at highway speed. Not for a rig this size. I felt the adrenaline kick in before my brain even processed what was happening. My right foot moved to the brake, not slamming, but firm and controlled. You don't slam the brakes in a loaded semi unless you want to jackknife or lose your load. You ease into it, feel the weight shift, let the air brakes do their job. The distance between us was shrinking fast, and then she hit her brakes. Hard, not a gentle slowdown, not a gradual deceleration. She stood on that pedal like she was trying to push it through the floorboard. Her brake lights flared so bright they looked like they might explode off the back of that SUV. My heart slammed into my throat. My hands locked on the wheel. I pressed the brakes harder, feeling the rig shudder beneath me as the weight of the load fought against the momentum. 80,000 pounds doesn't stop on a dime. It doesn't stop on a dollar bill. It takes time, distance, and a whole lot of prayer. The gap closed. 20 feet, 15, 10. I could see the license plate on her Mercedes, could see the little scratch on her rear bumper, could see the outline of her head through the back window, and then somehow we stopped. No impact, no collision, no metal on metal, crunch, just the hiss of my air brakes and the hammering of my pulse in my ears. I sat there for a second, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles had gone white. My breath came in short, shallow bursts. The truck had stopped maybe 3 feet behind her bumper, maybe 4, close enough that if I'd been going even 2 miles per hour faster, or if my reaction time had been a half-second slower, we'd have made contact. But we didn't. I looked up at my rear view, checking to see if anyone was coming up behind me. The road was clear. I glanced at the dashcam. The little red light was still blinking, steady and reliable, recording everything like it always did. For a moment, I thought maybe she'd just panicked. Maybe she didn't see me. Maybe it was an honest mistake and she'd wave an apology and we'd both go on with our day. Then her door opened. She stepped out of that Mercedes like she was stepping onto a stage. Middle-aged blonde hair pulled back tight, wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. She had her phone in her hand, held up high, already recording, and she started screaming, "You hit me! You hit my car!" I blinked, confused. Hit her? I didn't hit her. I could still see the gap between my bumper and hers. There was no damage, no contact, nothing. "Ma'am," I called out through my open window, keeping my voice calm. "I didn't hit you. We didn't make contact." She ignored me completely, circling around to the back of her SUV, phone camera pointed at her rear bumper, narrating like she was filing a police report in real time. "Look at this. Look what he did. This truck just slammed into me at full speed. I could have been killed." I climbed down from the cab, boots hitting the pavement, and walked slowly toward her. My legs felt unsteady, the adrenaline still coursing through me. I kept my hands visible, my posture non-threatening. I've been around enough road rage situations to know that anything can escalate if you're not careful. "Ma'am, there's no damage." "To your vehicle," I said, keeping my tone even. "I stopped in time. We didn't make contact." She whipped around, phone still recording, and jabbed a finger toward me like I was a criminal. "You're lying! I felt the impact. I have witnesses." I looked around. There were no witnesses. Just empty highway and a couple of distant cars that had already passed by. "Ma'am, I have a dashcam. It recorded everything. There was no impact." Her expression shifted for just a fraction of a second. Something flashed across her face. Surprise. Maybe, or calculation, but it was gone as fast as it appeared, replaced by that same theatrical outrage. "I don't care about your camera. You hit me. You're going to pay for this." I didn't argue further. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, reporting the incident, giving them our location on I-80. The dispatcher told me a state trooper would be there within 10 minutes. The woman, whose name I'd later learn was Sabrina Caldwell, Spent those. 10 minutes pacing around her SUV, recording video from every angle, talking into her phone like she was narrating a documentary about her near-death experience. She didn't look injured, didn't limp, didn't hold her neck or back. She strutted around in heels that looked like they could double as weapons, gesturing wildly, her voice rising and falling in perfectly timed waves of indignation. I stayed by, my truck leaning against the cab, watching her performance with a growing sense of unease. Something about this didn't feel random. It felt practiced, rehearsed. When the trooper arrived, he stepped out of his cruiser with the calm, measured demeanor of someone who'd seen this kind of thing before. He took statements from both of us, walked around both vehicles, examined the bumpers with a flashlight, even though it was broad daylight, no damage, no scratches, no paint transfer, nothing. He wrote it all down in his little notepad, then looked at me. "You said you have dashcam footage?" "Yes, sir. Can I see it?" I pulled out my phone, connected to the GoPro via Bluetooth, and pulled up the footage from 20 minutes earlier. The trooper watched in silence, his expression neutral, as the video showed the Mercedes swerving into my lane and brake-checking. Me, showed the gap closing, showed my controlled stop, showed the clear space between our vehicles when we came to rest. He handed the phone back. "No collision occurred." "You're free to go, Mr. Halverson," Sabrina erupted. "What? He hit me. Look at my car." The trooper didn't raise his voice. "Ma'am, I examined your vehicle. There's no damage. The dashcam confirms no contact was made. If you'd like to file a report, you're welcome to, but I'm not citing anyone here." Her jaw clenched. She looked like she wanted to argue further, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the trooper's tone. Maybe it was the realization that her performance wasn't working. Either way, she turned on her heel, climbed back into her Mercedes, and drove off without another word. The trooper gave me a nod. "Be safe out." "There. Thank you, officer." I climbed back into my cab, fired up the engine, and merged back onto I-80. My hands were still shaking slightly. I turned up the CB radio, half hoping to hear some chatter that would ground me, pull me back into the rhythm of the road. For a few miles, I tried to convince myself it was over. Just another crazy encounter. Just another story I'd tell over. Coffee at a truck stop. Nothing more. But deep down, in that part of my gut that had kept me safe for 30 years, I knew better. This wasn't over. The morning after the highway incident, the air smelled like rain and diesel when I walked across. The Pioneer Freight Yard. Gravel crunched under my boots the same way it had for years, but that morning it felt different, heavier, like each step had a little more weight in it. Maybe it was because I hadn't slept right. I kept replaying her screaming in my head, how she came charging at me with her phone up like a paparazzo, accusing me of destroying her car that hadn't even been touched. The way she moved, the way she spoke, it all felt like a script she'd memorized. I'd seen road rage before. I'd seen people lose their temper, throw insults, even throw punches. But this was different. This felt calculated. Like she'd been waiting for me or someone like me to come along. Still, I filed my incident report like always, short, clean, factual. "No contact," I wrote. "No damage to either vehicle." I attached the dashcam clip, uploaded it to Pioneer System and thought, I'd done my duty. The trooper on scene had agreed. No crash, no investigation needed. I figured that was it, but the world's changing. Truth doesn't travel as fast as outrage anymore. I'd just finished fueling up in Council Bluffs when my phone started buzzing. First call was Mark, my boss. Good guy. Built the company from 2 trucks to 20. He's not the type to bother me unless something's wrong. "You got a minute, Ray?" he asked, voice tight. "I can talk. That woman from yesterday, she filed a claim. Says you rear-ended her going 60. Says you caused irreversible spinal compromise." Her words, not mine. Her lawyer sent pictures of her SUV. My first thought was, what SUV? The one I saw on the shoulder was clean, shiny, pristine. So pristine she could have used it as a mirror to check her makeup. My second thought was, here we go. "Did you show them the Dashcam?" I asked. "Yep, they didn't care. Her lawyer claims it's edited." I felt my jaw clench. Edited? It's a GoPro running off a constant loop. You can't even edit the damn thing without downloading the file and messing with software I don't own. Mark sighed like he'd aged 5 years since yesterday. "Look, just get through your day. I'll call you if this grows legs." It didn't grow legs. It sprouted 10. At my next stop, a warehouse outside Omaha, I got a voicemail from an insurance adjuster wanting to discuss liability. Another message from a number I didn't recognize. Later, I learned that was Alan Bristow's office, the lawyer, representing Sabrina. And then came the kicker, an email attachment from Pioneer's insurer showing a preliminary demand from the claimant's attorney, $1.2 million. I swear, I sat on the edge of my bunk, staring at that number so long the screen dimmed twice. $1.2 million. I don't think I've seen that many zeros outside a lottery billboard. I make decent money for a trucker, but I'm not made of gold-plated diesel and angel feathers. I've got a mortgage, 2 kids who still need help, now and then, and a dog that eats more than I do. By the time I got rolling again, my mind wouldn't settle. I kept running my thumb along the seam of the steering wheel, the way I do when something's eating at me. Out here on the road, there's nothing but sky, pavement, and your own thoughts. And my thoughts were sour. I kept replaying the moment on the highway, her Mercedes weaving slightly, sliding into the gap between me and the slow lane like she owned every inch of asphalt. The brake lights flashing so violently I thought they might pop off the trunk. Me bracing the wheel, easing the brakes, keeping the rig steady. No impact, no contact. Just my pulse hammering in my ears and the smell of hot brake pads filling the cab. Then her screaming. The performance of it. The way she pointed her phone at me, narrating a crash that never happened, trying to get the story recorded her way before the truth had a chance to breathe. Part of me wondered if she'd planned it from the start. Part of me knew she had. 2 days later, when I got served near the petrol station in Des Moines, I stopped wondering and started knowing for sure. The process server walked up like he was handing me a menu. Young guy, maybe mid-20s, wearing a polo shirt and khakis, like he worked at a call center. "Are you Ray Halverson?" he asked. When I said yes, he dropped a thick stack of papers into my hands, muttered, "You've been served," and walked off. Like his job was done. Which I guess it was. Being sued feels unreal at first, like the world tilts sideways and you're standing on a slope you didn't see coming. I stood there in the parking lot, semi-trucks idling around me, the smell of fried food drifting from the diner, and I opened the folder. Words like reckless endangerment and gross negligence and willful disregard for human safety jumped off the page like they were written in fire. The lawsuit claimed I had operated a commercial vehicle in a dangerous and irresponsible manner, that I had failed to maintain safe following distance, and that my reckless actions had caused Sabrina Caldwell to suffer catastrophic and permanent injuries. I had to sit down on the bunk just to keep from shaking. The document went on for pages. Medical claims, emotional distress, loss of quality of life, diminished earning capacity. They were suing for damages, for medical costs, for pain and suffering, for punitive penalties. And at the bottom of page 6 in bold print was the number again, $200,000. I called Mark. He answered on the first ring. "I just got served," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. There was a pause, then, "Yeah, we got the notice too." "What do we do?" "We'll get a lawyer," he said. "Don't panic." But I could hear the fear behind his voice. Not fear for me. Well, not just for me, fear for the company. Pioneer Freight is a good outfit, but we're not rich. We don't have deep pockets or big city lawyers on standby. $1 million+ claim could crush us. Insurance would jack our premiums sky high. The DOT could flag us. Shippers would pull contracts. It was the kind of lawsuit that cracks open the foundation and swallows a whole company. And if it went bad, My career would be run off in the drain, my CDL flagged, my reputation destroyed. 30 years of safe driving gone in a cloud of lies. I didn't hit her, Mark, I said, quieter now. I know, Ray. I know. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the papers in my lap. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the lot. Trucks rumbled past, drivers heading out for night runs, oblivious to the fact that my entire life was unraveling in the cab of a freightliner. I thought about my kids, my house, my dog, the little things that make up a life, and I thought about Sabrina Caldwell walking around her pristine Mercedes, screaming into her phone, playing the victim in a crash that never happened. One lie from one stranger I'd never met until she cut me off, could erase everything I'd built since my 20s. The next few days blurred together. I kept running my scheduled loads because that's what you do. You keep working, keep moving, keep the wheels turning, even when your world is falling apart. But my mind was always on the lawsuit. Every mile felt like an hour. Every way station felt like an exam I wasn't ready for. At night, I'd lie in the bunk staring at the ceiling, imagining losing my CDL, losing my truck, losing my house. My youngest still needed braces. My oldest was trying to finish up community college. They depended on me. And now, some stranger with a luxury SUV and a talent for lying was threatening to take it all away. I started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before. The way other drivers would cut off trucks without thinking. The way people treated us like obstacles instead of professionals. The way a lie, told loud enough and often enough, could become someone's truth. The meeting with my attorney came at the end of that week. Mark had hired Lisa Tremaine through Pioneer's legal contacts, and from the moment I walked into her office, I could tell she was different. She was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, but sharp in a way that made you straighten your posture without realizing it. She wore a suit that meant business and carried a leather folio stuffed with more case documents than I thought could exist for something that never actually happened. Her office was small but organized. Law books line one wall, a desk covered in neat stacks of paper, a large monitor on a swivel stand. Everything had its place. "Mr. Halverson," she said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. "I've reviewed the initial filings. Before we talk strategy, I need to see the dashcam footage. All of it." I handed her the flash drive I'd prepared. She plugged it into her computer, dimmed the lights, and we both sat in silence as the video played on the large monitor. She watched it once, straight through, without pausing. Then she watched it again, slower this time, pausing at key moments. When the screen showed Sabrina's SUV dart in front of me, Lisa leaned closer. When Sabrina hit the brakes hard, Lisa paused the video, zooming in on the gap between vehicles. When the footage showed zero contact, Lisa sat back and breathed out, through her nose. "This," she said calmly, "is not a traffic misunderstanding. This is a staged brake check." Her voice didn't rise. She didn't dramatize it. She said it like it was a math equation. 2 + 2 = 4. This plus that equals fraud. "You're saying she did this on purpose?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "I'm saying the evidence suggests deliberate action. The aggressive lane change, the sudden deceleration, the immediate confrontation with a recording device already in hand. It's a pattern we see in insurance fraud cases." She turned to face me, her expression serious but not unkind. "Ray, I need to ask you some questions, a lot of questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me, even if the answers don't make you look good. Can you do that?" "Yes, Mom." For the next hour, she grilled me. What was the weather like? How much did your load weigh? What was your exact speed? Have you ever been in an accident before? Any citations? Any complaints from other drivers? How long have you had your CDL? When? Was your last DOT physical? Do you take any medications? Have you ever been sued before? I answered everything, told her about my 30 years of clean driving, showed her my logbooks, my maintenance records, my DOT medical card, showed her that I'd never even had a speeding ticket in my personal vehicle. When I finished, she opened another folder and pulled out a thick binder. "Now," she said, "let me show you something most people don't know about." She laid the binder open in front of me. Pages of charts, graphs, data points I didn't understand. "This is your ECM," she said. "The truck computer?" "Yes. The electronic control module. It logs everything: speed, throttle pressure, brake force, RPM, and most importantly, impact events." She tapped the binder with one finger. "Modern semi-trucks are basically rolling data centers. Your truck recorded every second of that encounter. Speed, brake application, the exact force you applied to the pedal, how the truck responded. And here's the beautiful part. It also records impacts." She flipped to another page, pointing to a section of the chart. If your truck had hit her vehicle, even at low speed, the ECM would have recorded a sudden deceleration event, a spike in brake force, a jolt in the suspension sensors. Think of it like a black box on an airplane. It doesn't lie. I felt something stir in my chest. Not quite hope, but close. So this proves I didn't hit her? It proves more than that. It proves you were driving safely, that you reacted appropriately, and that no collision occurred. Between the dashcam and the ECM data, we can build an airtight defense. I exhaled, feeling some of the tension drain from my shoulders. "There's one problem," she said, her tone shifting slightly. "The plaintiff's attorney is already claiming the ECM data might be corrupted or tampered with. They're going to fight us on this. How can they claim that? Because they're desperate. They filed a lawsuit based on a lie, and now they have to defend that lie. The dashcam already contradicts their story. If the ECM does too, their case falls apart, so they'll attack the data itself." She closed the binder and looked at me directly. "But here's what they don't know. Detroit Diesel, the manufacturer of your engine, keeps original datasets. Encrypted, time-stamped, unfiltered. No one can touch them except the manufacturer. If they try to claim your ECM data is corrupted, we subpoena Detroit Diesel directly. And when we do, the original data will match yours perfectly. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt like I could breathe." "So we can win this?" I asked. Lisa gave me a small, confident smile. "Ray, we're not just going to win this, we're going to expose it." That flicker of hope didn't last long, because within days, things escalated in ways I couldn't have imagined. Sabrina started posting online photos of her SUV at some body shop, angles that made it look like the front bumper had been shredded in a blender. But I knew for a fact that bumper had been spotless. I'd seen it up close. The trooper had examined it. There was nothing wrong with it. Now, suddenly, it looked like it had been through a demolition derby. In one video, she wore a neck brace, walking gingerly between two friends who guided her like she was made of glass. She narrated with a quivering voice about how the truck slammed into me like a locomotive, and my spine hasn't been the same since. Her followers poured sympathy over her like syrup. Strangers called me every name under the sun, even though none of them knew my name or had seen the footage. One comment said, "These truckers kill people every day. Throw the book at him." Another said, "Sue him for everything. Make him pay." I wanted to respond, wanted to defend myself, wanted to scream that none of it was true. But Lisa had been clear. Do not engage. Do not comment. Do not defend yourself. Publicly, anything you say can and will be used against you. So I stayed silent, kept driving, kept hauling, kept spiraling. The worst part wasn't the strangers online. It was the people I knew. Other truckers started giving me looks at truck stops, like maybe they believed the story. A couple of shippers asked Mark if I was the one in that lawsuit. One fuel station attendant asked me outright, "You the guy who hit that lady?" It didn't matter that I hadn't hit her. The story was out there now, alive and spreading, and I couldn't stop it. A week later came the truck inspection, and that's when things got surreal. Bristow, Sabrina's attorney, had filed a motion to inspect my rig. Lisa tried to block it, arguing it was a fishing expedition, but the judge allowed it. So on a cold Tuesday morning, I pulled my truck into Pioneer's maintenance bay and waited. They showed up with an entourage. Bristow himself, wearing an expensive suit that looked ridiculous in a truck yard, a mechanic they'd hired, a videographer with a professional camera, and some guy in a cheap blazer who I later learned was a forensic vehicle analyst, which I'm pretty sure is just a fancy way of saying someone who gets paid to find things that aren't there. They circled my rig like vultures around roadkill. The mechanic climbed underneath, shone lights into every crevice, examined the bumper, the frame, the mounting brackets. The videographer recorded everything. Bristow stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching with the expression of a man who expected to find gold. Lisa stood next to me, calm as ever, hands in her pockets. "They're not going to find anything," she whispered. "I know, but they're going to act like they did." She was right. When the mechanic finally pulled himself out from under the truck, he had a smudge of grease on his forehead and a frown on his face. He whispered something to Bristow that I couldn't hear. Bristow's expression soured. He shot me this glare like I'd personally cheated him out of something. The forensic analyst poked around for another 20 minutes, taking photos, scribbling notes, muttering technical jargon that sounded impressive but meant nothing. When they finally packed up and left, Lisa turned to me with a slight smile. "They were banking on finding damage. Didn't find any. That's good for us." "Why do I feel like this is just getting started?" I asked. "Because it is," she said. "This is the first escalation loop. There will be more." She was right about that, too. The second escalation hit when the medical reports rolled in, and holy hell did they roll in. Lisa called me on a Thursday afternoon while I was parked at a rest stop outside Lincoln. I was sitting in the cab, eating a sandwich that tasted like cardboard, staring at the dashboard, trying to convince myself this would all blow over eventually. "Ray, I need you to sit down for this," she said. "I'm already sitting." "Good. Because you're about to see how deep this rabbit hole goes." She emailed me the medical reports Bristow's team had submitted as part of their case. I opened the attachments on my phone, scrolling through page after page of medical terminology that made my head spin. Sabrina now had 2 slipped discs, L4, L5 and L5S1, chronic neuropathy in both legs, traumatic cervical instability, reduced mobility requiring assistive devices, sleep disturbances and chronic pain, syndrome post-traumatic stress disorder, emotional trauma and diminished quality of life, and something called delayed onset thoracolumbar compromise, which sounded to me like fancy doctor speak for. She paid for a very descriptive report. The documents included MRI scans, physical therapy evaluations, pain management consultations, psychological assessments, and a projected lifetime cost of care that exceeded $500,000 on its own. I felt sick reading it. Not because I believed it, I didn't, but because it was so thorough, so detailed, so professionally packaged that someone who didn't know better might actually buy it. "This is all fake?" I asked Lisa when she called back. "Not all of it," she said carefully. "Some of these conditions might be real. People have back problems, neck problems, chronic pain. But the question isn't whether she has these conditions. The question is whether you cause them. And the answer is no, because there was no collision." She paused, and I could hear papers rustling on her end. "Here's what concerns me more. Look, at page 7 of the orthopedic report. See the date stamp?" I scrolled to page 7. "October 15th. Right. Now look at page 14, the MRI results. What's the date? October 16th. And the psychological evaluation on page 22, October 18th. All within days of the incident, Lisa said, which means either she has the fastest medical system access in history, or she had these appointments scheduled before the incident even happened. That sent a chill down my spine. You think she's done this before? I asked. I think it's worth investigating, but here's the immediate problem. These reports look legitimate. They're from licensed doctors, accredited facilities, real medical professionals, which means either they're in on it or they're being fed false information about how these injuries occurred. Can we prove they're lying? We can prove the collision never happened. That's our job. Their job is to prove it did, and right now they're building a very convincing illusion. After we hung up, I sat in that rest stop for another hour, watching trucks come and go, drivers stretching their legs, grabbing coffee, heading back out onto the highway. Normal people doing normal jobs, unaware that one of their own was getting buried under an avalanche of lies. I thought about calling my kids, but what would I say? Hey, just wanted to let you know your dad might lose everything because a stranger decided to commit fraud. They had enough to worry about. So I started. The engine pulled back onto I-80 and kept driving, because that's what truckers do. We keep moving forward even when the world is falling apart behind us. The third escalation came from the people I thought were on my side. Pioneer's insurance company wanted to settle. Mark pulled me aside in the yard on a grey Friday afternoon. The sky looked like it was made of concrete, heavy and oppressive. He had dark circles under his eyes, and I realized he probably hadn't been sleeping any better than I had. "Ray, we need to talk about something," he said quietly. We walked away from the other drivers, toward the back of the lot where the old trailers sat gathering rust. "The insurance company called me this morning," Mark said. "They're recommending we settle." I felt my stomach drop. "Settle? For how much?" "They're talking about offering $250,000. Cash payout, no admission of guilt, case closed." $250,000, I repeated, the numbers tasting like poison in my mouth, for something that didn't happen. "They think a jury might sympathize with her," Mark said, his voice strained. "Luxury SUV driver, woman, claims of injury, medical reports that look legitimate on the surface. Ray, these cases, they're wild cards. Juries are unpredictable. They hear big truck and injured woman, and logic goes out the window." "You want me to admit fault?" I asked, my voice harder than I intended. "No, I don't. But they do." I shook my head. "A settlement goes on my record, Mark. Every insurance company I ever deal with, every future employer who runs a background check, every DOT audit, it'll be there. Settled a lawsuit for $250,000. I might as well have unsafe driver tattooed on my forehead." Mark looked at the gravel. "I know what it means for you, but I also have to think about the company. If we go to trial and lose, it could bankrupt us. The premiums alone would—" "I didn't hit her," I said, cutting him off. "I know. Then we fight it." Mark was quiet for a long moment. Then he put his hand on my shoulder. "Okay," he said. "We fight it. But Ray, you need to understand. If this goes south, it's not just you who pays. It's all of us. Every driver at Pioneer, every load we haul, every family that depends on this company staying afloat." "I know," I said. "But if we give in to this, we're telling every scammer on the highway that we're easy money. We're telling them they can lie, cheat, and collect a payday without consequences." "I won't do that," Mark nodded slowly. "Then I'll tell them no." After he walked away, I stood there for a while, staring at those old trailers. Some had been sitting there for years, waiting for repairs that never came. Waiting to be useful again. I wondered if that's what I'd become, if I lost this case. Just another piece of equipment gathering dust, waiting for a second chance that never arrives. The insurance rep called me directly the next morning. I was heading east on I-80, about an hour outside of Iowa City, when my phone rang through the truck's Bluetooth. His voice was smooth as melted butter, professional, practiced, the kind of voice that's been trained to sound reasonable even when saying unreasonable things. "Mr. Halverson, I'm calling to discuss the settlement proposal we sent to Pioneer Freight. I wanted to reach out to you personally because I think this is really in everyone's best interest." "Everyone except me," I said. He chuckled awkwardly, like I'd made a joke he wasn't sure how to respond to. "I understand this is difficult," he said, "but let me be frank with you. Trials are unpredictable. Juries are emotional. Even when the facts are on our side, and I believe they are, there's always a risk. If the jury awards her the full amount she's asking for, we're talking about $1 million+ payout. Your career would be over. Pioneer Freight could fold. But if we wrap this up quietly with a structured settlement—" "Quietly," I snapped. "A woman faked a crash and accused me of causing permanent spinal damage. And you want me to pay her so she'll go away quietly? She's already not quiet. She's all over social media calling me a reckless killer." "Mr. Halverson, I'm not paying for her new kitchen remodel or her vacation home or whatever else she's planning to buy with fraud money." There was a pause. A long one, the kind of silence that happens when someone realizes their script isn't working. "Mr. Halverson," he said, his tone cooling slightly, "we're trying to avoid a worst-case scenario here. I need you to understand the exposure we're facing." "The worst-case scenario already happened," I said. "She lied, she committed fraud, and now I'm supposed to reward her for it? No, I'm not doing it." Another silence, this one even longer. Then he cleared his throat. "I'll note your position in the file." He hung up before I could say anything else. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white against the black leather. The highway stretched out ahead of me, endless and empty, and for a moment I felt completely alone, like I was the only person in the world who gave a damn about the truth. 10 minutes later, Lisa called. "I heard you told the insurer no," she said. "Damn right I did." "Good." I could hear the smile in her voice. "Because I got something today that changes everything." My pulse jumped. "What?" "Raw ECM data from Detroit Diesel. Direct dataset. Factory sealed. Timestamped, encrypted. Zero chance of tampering. Zero chance of corruption. This is the cleanest evidence we could possibly ask for." "And?" I asked, almost afraid to hope. "And Ray, it shows everything, exactly as you drove it. Speed, brake application, throttle control, weight distribution, everything. And most importantly, it shows zero impact events, not even a minor jolt. Nothing." I closed my eyes for a second, feeling the tension drain out of my shoulders for the first time in weeks. "So we're going to court?" I asked. "Oh, we're going," Lisa said. "And they're not ready for what's coming." When the court date finally landed on the calendar, December 7th, a date that felt ominously historical. Something strange happened inside me. I'd spent weeks carrying this tension in my chest like a coiled steel cable. Fear, anger, frustration, the weight of people believing a lie about me. But now, with the showdown staring me dead in the face, the fear started burning off, replaced by something colder, steadier. Maybe it was determination, maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was just that I'd run out of room to be scared. The night before the hearing, I parked my rig behind the Pioneer office and sat in the cab with the engine, idling low, listening to the familiar vibration of the motor through the floor. That sound had gotten me through a lot in my life. Financial scares, long nights, rough winters, the death of my dad. It was the one constant I could rely on. A diesel doesn't lie. A diesel doesn't pretend. It just runs as well as you take care of it. I wished people worked the same way. Mark knocked on my door around 9. He climbed up into the cab and sat in the passenger seat, his shoulders slumped like he'd been carrying the whole company on his back. In a way, he had. "You ready for tomorrow?" he asked. "I think so." "You're doing the right thing, Ray," he said. "I know it's a hell of a lot to put on one man, but you're fighting for all of us. If we fold to this kind of scam, we're telling every crook on the highway that we're easy money." I nodded. "I'm not letting her buy a payout with lies." Mark rubbed his hands together, then looked out the windshield toward the yard lights shining on the trailers. "I've been in trucking nearly 40 years, he said. "I've seen some bad things on the road. Accidents, deaths, drivers who lost everything because of one mistake. But I've never seen someone try to burn down a man's life like this. Not for money, not like this." "Tomorrow the truth comes out," I said. He gave me a tired smile. "I hope so, for all our sakes." When he left, I shut down the engine and crawled into the bunk. But sleep didn't come. I stared at the ceiling for hours, watching the faint glow from the street lamps flicker through the curtains. I kept hearing her voice, Sabrina's shrill, accusatory scream, "You hit me! You hit me!" Even though I knew, I hadn't touched her. At some point near dawn, I dozed off. But my dreams were filled with brake lights and lawsuits, with the sound of a judge's gavel cracking over and over like a broken air hose. When my alarm went off at 6, I felt like I'd run a marathon in my sleep. I dressed slow that morning. Hands unsteady until I wrapped them around a cup of black coffee at the Pioneer office. Mark gave me a nod. Lisa met us in the parking lot, crisp suit, focused eyes, zero hesitation in her voice. "Ready?" she asked, "as I'll ever be." The drive to the courthouse felt unreal, like I was watching a movie of my own life from somewhere outside my body. The sun was still low, casting the building in long shadows. When we pulled into the parking lot, I saw them, reporters. Maybe a dozen, milling around the steps, cameras ready, microphones angled like spears. It hit me for the first time that this wasn't a private dispute anymore. People knew about it. People cared. People had taken sides without knowing the truth. 1. Reporter spotted us getting out of the car and immediately started shouting questions. "Mr. Halverson, do you have a comment on the lawsuit? Is it true you rear-ended Ms. Caldwell at highway speed? How do you respond to allegations of reckless driving?" Lisa kept her hand on my arm to guide me through the crowd. "Don't say anything to anyone," she whispered. "Not until we're inside." As we reached the doors, I saw her, Sabrina, standing there in a white coat that probably cost more than my monthly. Truck payment, hair done like she was attending a wedding, neck brace wrapped tight around her throat. She held a cane, a polished wooden cane that she clearly didn't need, and leaned theatrically against her lawyer, Bristow, who was smirking at the reporters like he'd already won. When Sabrina spotted me, her expression changed. Not fear, not guilt. Something closer to irritation, like my being alive and fighting back had inconvenienced her plans. I kept my eyes forward, walked past her, ignored the cameras, ignored the questions, just kept moving until we were through the doors and into the quiet, cold hallway of the courthouse. Inside, the courtroom smelled like old wood and stale air conditioning. The benches creaked as people settled into their seats. Some were there for other cases on the docket. Some were there for the spectacle. I even saw a pair of truckers I knew from a way station near Davenport. They gave me a subtle nod as I walked in, a silent show of solidarity. "Whole industries watching this," one whispered as I passed. That chilled me more than the air conditioning. Lisa and I sat at the defense table. She laid out her folders, the flash drives, the binders with ECM charts printed on heavy paper. She was calm in a way that felt almost supernatural, like she'd done this 1,000 times and knew exactly how it would end. Across the aisle, Bristow strutted around like a rooster in a henhouse. He kept smoothing Sabrina's hair back, whispering to her like he was coaching a star witness in a movie. She nodded along, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that somehow remained bone dry. When the judge walked in, everyone stood. She was a stern-looking woman in her 60s, grey hair pulled back tight, eyes sharp enough to cut through steel cable. Judge Patricia Hendricks. I'd heard her name before. She had a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. She didn't smile, didn't nod, just sat down, arranged her papers and got right to work. "Be seated," she said. Her voice carried weight, authority, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard. The bailiff called the case. Caldwell versus Halverson and Pioneer Freight Incorporated. Bristow stood first for his opening statement. He delivered it like a Broadway performance, dramatic pauses, mournful tone, strategic glances towards Sabrina as if to draw sympathy from the jury box. Except there was no jury. This was a bench trial, just the judge, which meant Bristow's theatrics were wasted on someone who'd seen every trick in the book. He painted me like a monster, a reckless trucker barreling down the highway without care. He described my rig like it was a runaway train, my driving like criminal negligence. He described her SUV like it was a tiny porcelain doll crushed under a sledgehammer. "Your Honor," he said, his voice dripping with manufactured sympathy, "this is a case about a woman whose life was forever changed by the reckless actions of a commercial driver who put profit over safety. Ms. Caldwell was simply driving to work when Mr. Halverson's vehicle struck her from behind, causing catastrophic injuries that will plague her for the rest of her life." He went on for 15 minutes, building a story that sounded compelling if you didn't know the truth. He referenced the medical reports, the photos of the damaged SUV, the psychological trauma Sabrina had endured. I kept my hands folded in my lap to keep them from shaking. Then it was our turn. Lisa stood with the calm air of a surgeon approaching an operating table. No theatrics, no emotion, just steady, factual words that cut through the nonsense like a blowtorch through ice. She didn't insult Sabrina, didn't raise her voice. She simply said, "Your Honor, the evidence will show that no collision occurred. The plaintiff's claims are contradicted by dashcam footage, electronic control module data, and the basic laws of physics. We will demonstrate that this lawsuit is based on a fabrication, and we ask the court to dismiss the case with prejudice." 12 words, clean, direct, lethal. And she sat back down. Bristow frowned, almost offended that she hadn't matched his dramatic performance. Judge Hendricks made a note on her legal pad, then looked up. "Mr. Bristow, call your first witness." The plaintiff calls Ms. Sabrina Caldwell. Sabrina stood slowly, like every movement caused her immense pain. She hobbled to the witness stand with the cane, her face twisted in what was supposed to be agony, but looked more like a soap opera actress overplaying a scene. They swore her in. She placed her hand on the Bible, promised to tell the truth, then sat down carefully, adjusting her neck brace like it was uncomfortable. Bristow approached her gently, his voice soft and sympathetic. "Ms. Caldwell, can you tell the court what happened on the afternoon of October 14th? She took a shaky breath, dabbing at her eyes with that same dry tissue. "I was driving to work," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I was in the right lane, going the speed limit, when suddenly I felt this impact from behind. It was like being hit by a train. My whole car lurched forward. I heard metal crunching. I couldn't breathe." "Lie number 1. What happened next?" Bristow asked. "I managed to pull over to the shoulder. I was in shock. I could barely move. I got out of my car and saw this massive truck stop behind me. The driver got out, and I confronted him. I was terrified. I thought I was going to die." "Lee, number 2. And did Mr. Halverson acknowledge hitting you?" "No," she said, her voice rising slightly. "He denied it. He said he didn't touch my car, but I felt it. I felt the impact. My car was damaged. My body was damaged. He didn't care." Lie number 3. Bristow walked her through the rest of her story. The medical appointments, the pain, the sleepless nights, the therapy, the fear of driving now, the way her life had been destroyed by my recklessness. She was convincing, I'll give her that. If I hadn't been there, if I hadn't seen what really happened, I might have believed her myself. When Bristow finished, he returned to his table with a satisfied expression. Judge Hendricks turned to Lisa. "Cross-examination." Lisa stood, but she didn't approach the witness stand immediately. She just looked at Sabrina for a long moment, her expression neutral. "Ms. Caldwell," Lisa said finally, her voice calm and measured, "you testified that Mr. Halverson's truck struck your vehicle at highway speed, correct?" "Yes," Sabrina answered, chin high. "And you testified that the impact threw your vehicle forward several feet?" "Yes." "And you testified that you heard metal crunching?" "Yes." "And you've suffered severe spinal trauma as a result?" "Yes." Lisa nodded. Slowly. "Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. No further questions at this time." Bristow blinked in confusion, clearly unsure why Lisa had passed so quickly. I wondered the same thing, but Lisa just returned to our table, calm as ever, and whispered to me, "Let her think she won. We'll dismantle it all at once." Judge Hendricks called for a brief recess. When we reconvened 20 minutes later, Lisa stood and addressed the court. "Your Honor, the defense is ready to introduce primary evidence." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Lisa walked to the prosecution table where a large monitor had been set up. She connected her laptop, pulled up a file, and turned to face the courtroom. "Your Honor, I'd like to present two pieces of evidence. First, the electronic control module data from Mr. Halverson's vehicle, provided directly by Detroit Diesel, the manufacturer. Second, dashcam footage from the incident itself." She clicked. The remote and the first ECM chart appeared on the screen. It looked like something from a science textbook. Lines, graphs, data points, timestamps. But Lisa walked through it with the precision of a professor teaching a class. "This chart shows Mr. Halverson's speed in the minutes leading up to the alleged collision," she said, pointing to a steady line hovering around 62 miles per hour. "As you can see, his speed was consistent and within legal limits." She clicked to the next slide. "This chart shows brake pressure. Note here," she pointed to a spike in the data. "At timestamp 14:47:32, Mr. Halverson applied the brakes with controlled, progressive pressure. This is consistent with defensive driving, not emergency braking." She clicked again. "This chart shows impact events. The ECM is designed to detect sudden deceleration, jolts, or collisions. Note that there are 0 impact events recorded during this time frame, not even a minor jolt. The vehicle came to a smooth, controlled stop." Bristow stood. "Objection, Your Honor. This data could be corrupted or tampered with." "Mr. Bristow," Judge Hendricks interrupted, her tone sharp, "is the defense presenting falsified evidence?" "No, Your Honor, but—" "Then sit down." He sat. Lisa continued, unruffled. For the court's reference, this data was obtained directly from Detroit Diesel's secure servers. It is encrypted, time-stamped, and verified by the manufacturer. It cannot be altered or tampered with after the fact. She let that sink in for a moment, then clicked to the next slide. "Now, Your Honor, I'd like to show the dashcam footage." The room fell silent as the video began to play. There it was, clear as day, the highway stretching out ahead, my rig in the right lane, the silver Mercedes weaving through traffic in the distance. Then the Mercedes darted into my lane with barely any space. Then the brake lights flared, violent and sudden. Then my controlled stop, the gap between vehicles visible, unmistakable. Then Sabrina jumping out, phone already recording, screaming about a collision that hadn't happened. The courtroom was dead silent except for the audio. From the dashcam, Sabrina's shrill voice, my calm responses, the distant hum of traffic. When the video ended, Lisa paused it on a frame showing the clean, undamaged bumper of Sabrina's Mercedes. "Your Honor," Lisa said softly, "the plaintiff's testimony does not align with physical reality." Judge Hendricks leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. She looked at the screen, then at Sabrina, then back at the screen. "Mr. Bristow," she said, her voice cold, "do you have a response to this evidence?" Bristow stood, his face pale. Your Honor, the footage could be edited. The data came directly from the manufacturer, Judge Hendricks snapped. Are you accusing Detroit Diesel of fabricating evidence on behalf of the defendant? Bristow's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Sit down, Mr. Bristow. Judge Hendricks turned her attention back to Lisa. Does the defense have anything further? Just one more piece of evidence, Your Honor. Lisa pulled up another file. These are social media posts from Ms. Caldwell's Instagram account posted on October 15th, the day after the alleged collision. The screen showed photos of Sabrina at a boutique mall, smiling, wearing high heels, no neck brace in sight. Another photo showed her at a restaurant, holding a wine glass, laughing with friends. Ms. Caldwell claims she was bedridden with severe pain the day after the incident, Lisa said. These posts suggest otherwise. Bristow stood again, desperation in his voice. Your Honor, these could be old photos reposted. They're time-stamped, Lisa said calmly, and geotagged, posted in real time from locations in Des Moines. Judge Hendricks' expression hardened. She looked at Sabrina, who was now staring at her hands, the tissue crumpled in her fist. Ms. Caldwell, the judge said, her voice like iron. Do you have an explanation for this discrepancy? Sabrina looked up, her eyes wide. I don't remember posting those. I was on pain medication. I was confused. You were confused enough to go shopping and out to dinner, but not confused enough to stop posting on social media? Judge Hendricks asked. Sabrina didn't answer. The judge closed the folder in front of her with a sharp snap. I've heard enough. The motion to dismiss is granted, with prejudice. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Furthermore, Judge Hendricks continued, her gaze fixed on Sabrina. Miss Caldwell, you will appear in this courtroom in 2 weeks to show cause why you should not be charged with insurance fraud, perjury, and filing a false police report. Bailiff, please ensure Ms. Caldwell receives the appropriate notice. Sabrina's face drained of color. Her cane clattered to the floor. She didn't even pick it up as she stumbled out of the courtroom, her expensive white coat billowing behind her, the neck brace askew. Bristow followed her, no longer strutting, more like a man trying to outrun consequences. Lisa gently placed her hand on my shoulder. It's over, Ray. But it didn't feel real. Not yet. Not until Judge Hendricks looked directly at me and said, Mr. Halverson, and court finds no wrongdoing on your part. You are fully cleared. And may I add, your decision to fight this lawsuit likely prevented others from being victimized in the same manner. You did the right thing. That's when the weight finally lifted. It felt like the first full breath I'd taken in weeks. Outside the courthouse, the reporters surrounded us immediately. Cameras pointed at my face, microphones shoved toward my chest. Questions fired like nails from a gun. Mr. Halverson, how does it feel to be vindicated? Do you have anything to say to Ms. Caldwell? Do you think the trucking industry needs better protection against false claims? Will you pursue legal action of your own? I didn't say much. Just thanked my lawyer, thanked my company, thanked the truth for finally coming out. Let Lisa handle the legal talk, the implications, the next steps. But I'll tell you the moment that stuck with me. One of the truckers who'd shown up, a guy named Donnie I'd talked to once at a way station near Davenport, walked up, slapped my shoulder and said, "Hell of a thing, Ray. You didn't just win for you, you won for all of us." I hadn't thought about it that way until he said it. But he was right. This wasn't just my fight. Brake check scammers target truckers because they think we'll fold. Because they think insurance companies will pay to avoid bad press. Because they think we're easy targets, just big rigs on the road with deep pockets and no voices. Not today. Not this time. 2 weeks later, I got the call from Lisa. The DA was pressing charges against Sabrina, fraud, perjury, filing a false police report, the whole cocktail of consequences she'd been trying to avoid. That chapter wasn't mine to fight, just mine to witness. Justice finally was coming for her, A few days after that, Mark called me into the Pioneer office on a Friday afternoon. He had that grin on his face, the kind a kid gets when they've been hiding a secret they can't wait to reveal. "Come outside," he said. I followed him out into the yard, and that's when I saw it. A brand new Freightliner Cascadia sitting by the bay doors. Fresh chrome gleaming in the afternoon sun. Factory-fresh paint, the smell of new upholstery drifting through the open door. And there, painted clean under the driver's window, was my call sign, "Iron Shoes." "You earned this," Mark said, his voice thick with emotion. "After everything you went through, after what you did for this company, for all of us, this felt right." I stood there for a moment just staring at the truck. The metal was warm under the sun. Smooth. Perfect. A new beginning. When I fired her up, the engine roared to life with that deep, powerful rumble that only a diesel can make. I climbed into the cab, adjusted the seat, ran my hands over the new steering wheel, and inhaled the scent of fresh upholstery and promise. I pulled out onto the highway, the world stretching wide in front of me. My Dashcam, a newer, better model. Mark had installed, blinked its little red light at me, recording like always, and as the miles rolled under my wheels, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. After everything, after lies, lawsuits, half-truths, and full-on scams, I was back where I belonged, the road ahead of me, the past behind me, the truth on my side. People like Sabrina come and go. They think they can game the system, exploit hard-working drivers, collect a payday with lies and theatrics. And sometimes, unfortunately, they succeed. Sometimes the insurance companies settle. Sometimes good drivers lose everything because fighting costs more than folding. But not this time. This time, the truth won. And I'll tell you something else. I'm not the only one. Every day, truckers out here are dealing with brake-check scammers, staged accidents, fraudulent claims. Drivers who've spent decades doing everything right, suddenly facing lawsuits that could destroy them. Most people never hear about it. Most people never see the dashcam footage that proves innocence. Most people don't know that an 80,000-pound rig has a computer inside that records the truth, even when people lie. That's why I wanted to share my story. Not for sympathy, not for attention, but because if it happened to me, it's happening to others. And if you're a driver out there facing something similar, or if you know someone who is, I want you to know that the truth matters. Evidence matters. Standing your ground matters. People like Bristow find new clients to manipulate. People like Sabrina find new targets. But me, I'm still out here, still rolling, still trusting the only thing that's never lied to me, the road. And if another scammer tries to take me down, well, I'll let the dashcam roll, always. If you're a trucker, or you know someone who drives, or you just believe that the big rig is the unsung hero of the highway, there are more stories like this out there. Stories where hard-working drivers stand up against scammers and win. So if this story meant something to you, if it got your blood pumping or made you believe that justice still exists out here on the asphalt, then stick around. Subscribe. There are more stories where this came from. Real truckers, real scams, real justice. Write your story in the comments and let's share our dramas and victories over scammers. Keep the wheels turning and I'll see you on the road.